So think about this for a second. Life, comparison, doubt, they've all likely convinced you to live beneath your own power.
Oh, absolutely. It happens to almost everyone.
Right. And at some point, probably without you even realizing the exact moment it happened, you just, you learn to shrink.
Yeah, you learn to question your own instincts.
Exactly. You start measuring your intrinsic value through the eyes of people who, frankly, don't even have the capacity to understand your future. But what if you could systemically unlearn that habit?
That's the real question, isn't it? Unlearning the shrinking.
Right. What if you could build an identity so utterly unshakable that the world is forced to adjust to you rather than you constantly contorting yourself to fit into it? Because that is our mission for today's deep dive.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too.
Yeah.
We are unpacking a massive 10-chapter mindset audiobook today, and it serves as this literal architectural blueprint for reconstructing your identity brick by brick.
And, we really aren't just looking at motivational platitudes here.
No, definitely not.
The source material grounds its framework really heavily in principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, neuroplasticity, performance psychology. It's heavy stuff.
It is. We're going to examine the exact psychological shifts and structural tools you need to stop playing small and start dominating your space.
And what makes this source material so compelling right off the bat is that it just immediately dismantles this core illusion most of us operate under.
The idea that success makes you confident.
Exactly. The dominant cultural narrative dictates that results build confidence. The assumption is that once you secure the promotion or once you hit the financial milestone, then you'll feel strong.
Right, like the confidence will just naturally arrive in the mail with the paycheck.
Yeah, but this text argues that we have the sequence completely inverted. Outcomes do not build identity builds outcomes.
Which is a huge paradigm shift.
It is.
Right.
If you harbor a fragile internal identity, no amount of external validation will suddenly forge a strong one. And the foundational catchphrase of this entire philosophy is, well, identity is not discovered, it's built.
Not discovered, built. I love that.
Yeah, we are basically dispensing with the mystical idea that you have to go on some, spiritual retreat to find yourself. You don't find it. You construct it.
Okay, let's unpack this right away, because if we are looking at this as a construction project, the scale of what is being asked here is enormous.
Oh, it's massive.
Right. Rebuilding your identity isn't like slapping a fresh coat of paint on a wall. Think of this deep dive as a software patch for your mental operating system. We're removing outdated code and installing a high-performance framework.
That's a great way to look at it. That's a fundamental system reboot.
Exactly. And the source material argues that to execute this massive structural overhaul, you have to start at the system boot-up sequence, the morning.
The morning is everything. It is the command center.
Right. The morning is identified as the ultimate battleground for identity. Why is that?
Well, to understand why it's so vital, we have to look at the neurology of waking up. When you first transition from sleep to wakefulness.
It's like groggy. Alarm just went off.
Yeah, exactly. Your brain is shifting out of delta and theta wave states and moving into alpha and eventually beta. And during this transition, the default mode network in your brain is incredibly active.
The default mode network, that's the part responsible for rumination, right?
Right. It handles self-referential thought, anxiety about the past or future. So before you've even had a glass of water, your brain is already scanning for threats.
It's recalling past failures.
Exactly. And the text argues that strength is not some genetic lottery ticket. It is a built asset. So if your identity is still tethered to the failures of yesterday, your default mode network will ensure you repeat those patterns today.
So you have to structurally intervene in that mental boot-up sequence.
You have to, before the external world gets a chance to program you for the day.
And the intervention the source proposes is what it calls the Morning Command Center protocol. It has 3 very rigid rules for the moment you wake up.
Very rigid.
Yeah. Rule 1, 1 full hour without the phone. Which, is brutal for most people.
It's tough, but it forces the mind into a proactive leadership mode rather than reactive survival mode.
Right. Then rule 2, 1 specific action that builds momentum, like reading, moving the body, mapping goals, just something that generates friction and reward.
Right, taking immediate action.
And then rule 3, which I find fascinating, the recitation of 3 specific identity statements. They are, I show up, I am enough, I lead my life.
And I want to point out, those statements are fundamentally different from the kind of toxic positivity affirmations we usually see on social media.
Right, where people are just like, everything is perfect and I am a billionaire.
Exactly. The text defines these as psychological anchors. When you state, I show up, I am enough, I lead my life, you aren't trying to magically convince yourself that life is easy.
So what are you doing?
You are executing a cognitive interrupt. You are manually shifting your nervous system out of that anxious default mode network and forcing your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain, to take the wheel.
Ah, so by declaring that you lead your life, you shift the locus of control.
Exactly. From external to internal. You remind your biology that you author your response to the day.
But, I mean, practically speaking, doesn't this sound incredibly grueling?
How so?
Well, to wake up every single morning and immediately have to act as the warden of your own mind, policing every stray thought of I'm too tired and replacing it with these heavy anchors.
It does sound like a lot of work.
Right. The cognitive load of that level of self-monitoring seems completely unsustainable. Most people just want to drink their coffee and stare at the wall.
Sure they do.
So how does the text reconcile the sheer exhaustion of this daily internal warfare?
Well, this raises an important question about the difference between motivation and discipline. The text explicitly addresses this exhaustion. It states that standards are the spine of your identity.
Standards are the spine.
Right. The goal is not to wake up overflowing with intense motivation. That's biologically impossible.
Your dopamine system just can't sustain that.
Exactly. The goal is consistency. You are laying down a baseline standard for your internal dialogue. And over time, through neuroplasticity, this physical repetition changes the neural pathways in your brain.
So it actually gets easier.
Yes. What starts as exhausting heavy lifting eventually becomes automatic. Letting your standards lead instead of your emotions becomes your new default setting.
Wow. Okay, so the morning routine is essentially pouring the concrete for the foundation. You get the internal environment stabilized.
Right.
But there is a massive vulnerability built into this timeline because you can construct all the internal armor you want at 6 a.m. But the second you leave the house or open your inbox at 8 a.m.,
It gets tested.
immediately tested by the demands, crises, and opinions of everyone else. So how does the source suggest we protect that baseline? Building it is one thing. Protecting it from a stressful Tuesday afternoon is another.
Yeah, the transition from internal sanctuary to external chaos is where most people surrender their power. And the source makes a profound assertion here. Your attention is your most expensive currency.
Attention is currency.
Yes, and most of us are bankrupting ourselves daily. We aren't overwhelmed because we are inherently weak. We are overwhelmed because we are chronically overstimulated.
Because we expose our newly forming identities to saturated environments.
Exactly. Voices that intentionally try to shrink us. The manufactured outrage of the news, the curated perfection of social media.
And the cynical opinions of peers who have absolutely no stake in our long-term success. The phrase the source uses is striking. Mental pollution makes strong people act small.
It's so true.
So to counteract this pollution, it introduces some really aggressive boundaries. The first is the 90-minute focus block.
This one is huge.
Right. For 90 uninterrupted minutes during your most productive window, you enforce 0 notifications and 0 responding. You shift from absorbing to creating.
And the neuroscience behind that block is crucial. Every time you respond to a notification, you incur what psychologists call a switching cost.
Your brain has to disengage, process the new thing, and try to re-engage.
Exactly. And that constant fragmentation spikes cortisol, the stress hormone, and completely obliterates your ability to do deep work.
So by enforcing absolute isolation for 90 minutes, you aren't just getting more done.
You are structurally protecting your prefrontal cortex from biochemical stress.
You maintain the identity of an architect instead of reverting to an emergency responder.
I love that framing.
And then, to clean up the environment beyond just those 90 minutes, the text demands a 7-day audit. You create a kill list and a keep list.
The kill list is ruthless.
It really is. The keep list is just rituals and habits that energize you. But the kill list, you document scrolling patterns, conversational loops that drain energy, and the rule is immediate, non-negotiable removal.
What's fascinating here is the text's focus on energy leaks. It argues we rarely fail because of one massive mistake. We fail because of 1,000 microscopic energy leaks.
Like hitting snooze 3 times or gossiping at the water cooler.
Right. Each micro-decision consumes cognitive bandwidth. A hard audit shows you exactly where your power is bleeding out.
Now, this audit expands into the attention whitelist and blacklist. And this brings us to what I think is the most controversial instruction in this whole framework.
The people you cut out.
Yes. The whitelist is 3 sources that elevate you: mentors, books, philosophies. But the blacklist, The text explicitly mandates remove 10 people who make you feel smaller.
It's intense.
I mean, let's stop right there. That sounds great in a vacuum, but practically, what if one of those people is your manager or your mother-in-law? You can't just ghost your family.
No, you can't.
Isn't that incredibly harsh? How does the text reconcile this extreme advice with unavoidable human relationships?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the concept of emotional contagion is driven by mirror neurons in our brain.
Mirror neurons, so we biologically sync to others' emotions.
Exactly. If you constantly interact with someone operating from victimhood or cynicism, your brain expends massive energy resisting that low frequency.
So when you elevate your standards, you threaten their worldview.
Right. You become an uncomfortable mirror to their stagnation, and they will try to pull you back down to alleviate their own cognitive dissonance.
But what about the unavoidable people? The boss, the family member?
The text isn't demanding a dramatic bridge-burning exit in those cases. Removal often means structural and emotional removal.
Meaning you just limit exposure.
Yes. You refuse to debate your goals with them. You mentally categorize them as a blacklist energy source, which allows you to interact transactionally without internalizing their judgment.
I see. It's a psychological firewall. Treat your attention like a city's water supply. If a specific factory or a toxic coworker is dumping chemical runoff into the reservoir, you don't just keep drinking the water and hoping your morning meditation cures the poisoning.
Exactly. You shut off the valve from that specific source.
Okay, so you've audited the environment, blocked the runoff, silenced the digital noise, the environment is finally quiet. But the text points out that nature abhors a vacuum.
Right. If you don't fill that silence with self-belief, insecurities rush back in.
And this is the hardest part. You have to generate self-belief when your external reality hasn't caught up to your ambition yet.
This is the critical pivot of the entire philosophy. The source forces you to confront a painful reality. The most transformative moments of your life will occur in total isolation.
When no one understands your vision.
Yes. No applause, no external validation. If your identity depends on external permission to feel confident, you will inevitably quit during these quiet seasons.
Because the world only supports you after you prove you can support yourself.
Exactly. So self-belief must be a manufactured daily discipline.
And the mechanism for this is the evidence board. Because the brain requires proof, not promises. Every single day, you log one undeniable action you took that proves you are stepping into this new identity.
Plus the 25 reasons.
Right. You write down 25 deep, personal reasons why you must succeed. Visceral, emotional drivers, not just, I want a nice car.
The psychology here is rooted in overcoming imposter syndrome. When your brain whispers you're an imposter, you can't fight it with vague positive thinking.
You fight it with empirical data.
Yes. You look at the board and reply, I am not an imposter. I executed these 30 specific actions this month. Self-trust is the true currency of power.
Now, to supplement this, the text prescribes a 2-minute daily visualization, but it's heavily tied to physical embodiment. It gives specific physical tactics.
The posture stuff.
Yes. Intentional postural positioning, pulling the shoulders back, expanding the chest, lifting the chin, and commanding the initiative, being the first to speak, the first to say hello, speaking deliberately and slowly.
Those physical directives are perhaps the most scientifically grounded part of this section. It's about proprioception.
How the body talks to the brain.
Exactly. When you feel threatened, your biological default is to shrink to protect vital organs. Your brain interprets this and releases stress hormones.
Pulling you to forcing the fear.
Right. But when you deliberately override that instinct, when you expand your chest, your proprioceptors send a different signal. They tell your amygdala you are safe and dominant. It lowers cortisol.
You're using your skeleton to hijack your neurochemistry. I love how actionable that is. It's like the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
Right? A thermometer just reads the room's energy and shrinks to avoid judgment. It's passive. But a thermostat sets the tone. You force the room's energy to conform to your standard.
That is exactly the dynamic. You move from environmental regulation to self-regulation. And the unifying mantra here is, act as if I am the best until being the best becomes natural.
Which sounds a bit like fake it till you make it.
It does, but the text draws a sharp distinction. Faking it is a performance for others. The text calls this priming. You're priming your own nervous system like an athlete warming up.
So authority becomes your default reaction under pressure.
Exactly.
But, okay, priming your nervous system is powerful. But this raises a massive red flag for me.
Lots of the flag.
You can have the best posture in the world. You can speak slowly and command the room. But if you aren't doing the hard, unglamorous work behind the scenes, you aren't building an identity, you're building a persona.
A hollow shell.
Exactly. And this brings us to the pivot, where the source material gets incredibly uncompromising. It transitions to extreme ownership.
This is where it separates theorists from practitioners. A strong identity is meaningless without uncompromising accountability. The text takes a relentless stance against excuses.
Because excuses feel safe to the ego.
Right, they serve an evolutionary purpose. When you fail, cognitive dissonance is painful. An excuse releases that pressure.
The market was bad. My boss is unfair.
Yeah, you get a momentary hit of relief. But every time you make an excuse, you subconsciously signal to your brain that the external world controls your destiny. It's learned helplessness.
It's self-sabotage wrapped in self-preservation. So to destroy this reflex, the source mandates daily ownership sheets.
Stripping away the emotional narrative of your day.
Right, just raw data. What decisions did you make? Where did you hesitate? What was your role in the mistakes?
And this practice facilitates the 1% improvement rule. You force a psychological separation between feelings and actions. You acknowledge that fatigue doesn't dictate behavior. Identity does.
So instead of blaming a tight deadline, you say, I failed to communicate clearly. I own that. Tomorrow, I improve my communication by 1%.
Taking total emotional responsibility completely eradicates the victim mindset.
And this philosophy bleeds directly into how the source reimagines the vision board. We all know the traditional one glue a Ferrari to a poster and hope the universe delivers.
The text mocks that approach entirely.
It really does. It demands a highly structured blueprint with 4 mandatory sections.
The why, who, what, and daily 3.
Exactly. The why is the emotional anchor, the who is the identity and discipline to embody, the what are the concrete goals, and the daily 3 are 3 non-negotiable daily actions.
That structure shifts focus from the lag measure the goal to the lead measures the daily actions.
But executing this requires ruthless prioritization. It tells you to eliminate secondary projects. I compare this to closing unnecessary browser tabs on a computer.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Every extra commitment, the side hustle, the committee you don't care about, it fragments your focus. It slows down the processor of your main vision.
And cutting those cords generates immense internal resistance. Discomfort is the unavoidable byproduct of raising your standards. The text points out that discomfort is actually the most honest measure of commitment.
Okay, so let's walk through the reality of this. You've audited the environment, you are taking extreme ownership, you've cut the browser tabs, you are relentlessly executing your daily 3.
You're doing everything right.
Exactly by the book. But then a month goes by, 2 months, and absolutely nothing in your external reality has changed.
The visible season.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Your bank account is still 0. You're in the same job. You put out maximum energy, and the universe gives you 0 feedback.
The invisible season is the graveyard of potential. It's where the vast majority of people abandon their new identity.
Not because the work is too hard physically, but because the psychological weight of the silence is unbearable.
Right. The human brain expects a return on investment. In the invisible season, you experience a constant dopamine prediction error.
You do the work, expect the reward, no reward arrives, and you crash.
Exactly.
So how does the source suggest you survive a season where you look like a complete failure to the outside world?
Well, the text uses a root system analogy here. The roots grow long before the tree rises. To survive, you have to fundamentally change what you measure.
You can't measure external applause.
No, you use the identity log.
Yep.
You measure internal decisions. Did you execute your daily 3 when exhausted? Did you hold your posture? You derive dopamine from executing the standard itself?
But practically, there are days when the identity log feels hollow, when your brain is screaming at you to stop. The text introduces the one more rule for this.
A brilliant hack for the prefrontal cortex.
When you reach the absolute limit, you commit to 1 more minute, 1 more rep, 1 more page.
It's not about the volume of that one extra rep. It's about proving to your nervous system that your identity dictates the stopping point, not your fatigue.
It also talks about gatekeeper moments, identifying the daily action your weaker self resists most, and attacking it. But I have to push back hard here.
Okay, go ahead.
We live in a culture finally waking up to chronic burnout. If we follow this advice, constantly pushing past exhaustion, constantly demanding 1 more, aren't we just accelerating towards a nervous breakdown?
It's a fair concern, but the text clarifies this very carefully. The push is not about blind physical destruction. The author distinguishes between actual central nervous system fatigue, which needs sleep, and psychological ego resistance.
Ego resistance.
Yes, humans have an evolutionary mandate to conserve energy. Comfort is an evolutionary cage. When you try to do transformative work, your brain senses the energy demand and floods you with feelings of exhaustion to trick you into stopping.
Ah, so it's distinguishing between your body needing rest and your ego throwing a tantrum.
Exactly. You have to override that biological illusion. You practice active faith. You reduce timeline anxiety, comparing your day 1 to someone's year 10, and trust the compounding actions.
Think of it like building a massive suspension bridge. For the first 2 years, you don't see a single cable in the air. The public thinks nothing is happening.
But underwater.
Right, underwater, engineers are pouring thousands of tons of concrete into the bedrock. Invisible work. If you string the cables before those anchorages cure, the bridge collapses. The invisible season is pouring the underwater concrete.
That is a phenomenal visualization. The depth of the unseen foundation dictates the height of the structure.
But here's the brutal truth the source doesn't shy away from. You can build the foundation, execute active faith, push past the urge to quit, and still fail.
Catastrophically.
Exactly. A macroeconomic shift wipes out your business. You hit a wall that knocks you flat. The ultimate test of identity isn't if you avoid failure, it's how you get back up. Which brings us to the final chapter, the mechanics of resurrection.
Falling is merely feedback. The strongest people separate the objective facts of failure from the subjective interpretation of their worth.
When a fragile identity fails, the narrative is, I am broken.
But when a built identity fails, the narrative is, the strategy failed. What is the precise lesson?
And to ensure recovery doesn't take months, the text provides a highly systematized 4-step protocol, the 24-hour reset. It treats failure like a sterile operational procedure. Step 1 is the debrief.
Which is looking at the wreckage completely devoid of emotion.
Like an NTSB investigator, step 2 is rest.
You step away and let physiological stress markers subside. You can't make strategic decisions in fight or flight.
Step 3 is reset, the active release of guilt and shame.
Right, releasing the emotional baggage of yesterday.
And step 4 is return, re-engaging immediately with one small, deliberate action to restart momentum.
What's fascinating here is the neurology. Every time you rise after a failure, you physically strengthen the neural pathways of resilience. You move electrical activity from the emotional center to the logical center.
Bouncing back becomes an automatic habit, not a grueling choice.
Yes, your nervous system learns failure is just a temporary disruption in data processing.
And to lock this in, the source provides a final daily anchor for your lowest points. I rise, I learn, I grow, I persist, I am unstoppable.
Vocalizing that in a crisis actively rewires your brain.
Incredible. Well, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with claiming the morning, bypassing the default mode network. We audited environments, used 90-minute focus blocks, generated internal evidence, and learned to be the thermostat of the room.
We faced extreme ownership, surviving the invisible season, and mastering the 24-hour reset.
Exactly.
If there's one ultimate takeaway, it's that success is the outcome of consistent identity-based action. You have to take ownership of these tools today, even when no one is watching.
That is the perfect distillation. But before we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought. We spent all this time talking about building an identity that survives the invisible season and rises from failure. But consider this. What happens when your invisible season finally ends and you achieve massive, undeniable success? Does that success and the applause that comes with it become the new noise you have to silence? Who do you have to become to survive the danger of having everything you worked for? Until next time, keep diving deep.